whether it's Patricia or whoever, and says 5 minutes before kickoff, you're starting, you're playing, Malcolm's not playing.
In the Super Bowl? That's wild.
And that guy who has been preparing for 2 weeks for this game suddenly thrown into the fire. I'm not saying, he didn't, perform whatever admirably, or he didn't do his best.
He was Eric Rowe. I mean,
right.
He's what he is.
He did his best. They would have won this game if Malcolm Butler played.
That's the Kirk and Callahan show as we continue to discuss the Patriots Super Bowl loss to the Eagles. Welcome to SI Now. I'm Amy Campbell here with Robin Lundberg. Robin, Patriots fans still reeling from this loss, of course, and still baffled by this Malcolm Butler thing. I'm still confused by it. I woke up still thinking about that today.
Well, hilarious hypotheticals to say they definitively would have won the game had Butler played. There's a definition of blame that is a way to discharge pain and discomfort. And I feel like when someone's team loses, oftentimes they're looking for someone to blame so they can feel better about the loss. It was odd. Don't get me wrong. It was odd. But I didn't come away from that game feeling like we need to blame someone for the loss. And no one's above being criticized for an individual move. But Bill Belichick, of all people, probably deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to playing in this sort of game and knowing how to win championships.
Oh, certainly, but I think he's definitely getting a lot of scrutiny for that, and I think it's rightfully so. And with that, we'll continue to analyze the Super Bowl and its many layers. We'll bring in our guy, Jonathan Jones of the MMQB, who comes to us courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places. Jonathan, we're still talking about this whole Malcolm Butler situation. He plays most of the season, over 97% of the defensive snaps there. We saw Ian Rappaport's report that said it was a combination of him being sick, a rough week at practice, and a minor disciplinary issue here. This is the Patriots' way. There is no player bigger than the system, but when you look at this specific situation, is it possible that the Patriots' way was their downfall here?
Well, I would think so. I wouldn't go through the hypothetical of if Malcolm Butler plays, these Patriots win this Super Bowl. But obviously, I believe that the Patriots would have had a much better chance of winning the Super Bowl with Malcolm Butler on the field rather than him being off the field. When you look at it, it still doesn't make any sense, even with the report of, okay, he didn't have a great week of practice. Yes, he was a little ill. I will still take ill Malcolm Butler over Eric Rowe, who, again, did as well as he can, but he's still Eric Rowe. He's not Super Bowl hero Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler told our Albert Breer that he had a crummy season, if you will. But I still believe that he was going to be able to bounce back in the Super Bowl. As far as the minor rules violation related to a curfew, look, I'm there at the stadium, and I'm saying, all right, he's not playing the first series, had to break curfew. He's not coming out the second series. Well, then maybe he's going to have to sit the whole first half. But what I continued hearing from a lot of scribes and media type after the game was, well, they would have used him if they needed him. Well, they did need him. Nick Foles passed for 373 yards against this Patriots defense. This game was combined for the least amount of defense in NFL history. They needed Malcolm Butler. He was there. He was active. If you're going to make a point like Bill Belichick made, then just deactivate him. But to have him active and not play, I think was stubborn. I think it was hard-headed. I think that Bill Belichick got in his own Patriot way.
You mentioned that 373 yards of offense that this team gave up, the most they've given up since week 6 without Malcolm Butler. But, Jonathan, you mentioned that he absolutely should have played. Do you think that in hindsight, though, because of this loss, because of what we saw, do you think that we're making too big a deal of this? Do you think Malcolm Butler legitimately turns this game around? Because they also lost a guy like Brandon Cook. So are we just focusing on the one thing because it's so bizarre?
In a sense, absolutely. And then it also does take away from the incredible Eagles performance, right? And the game that Doug Peterson called, how surgical Nick Foles was, how that defense was able to make a play on Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback ever, the greatest Super Bowl quarterback ever, when they needed to. That totally takes away from the magic that the Philadelphia Eagles were able to create. All that said, though, you do have to believe that Malcolm Butler out there on the field would be able to make some plays on the football, that some of these passes that were completed against Eric Rowe wouldn't happen against Malcolm Butler, that maybe the Eagles wouldn't pass for 130 yards on third down alone during the game. And so it is important to focus on what could have been there. But to an earlier point, would the game have ultimately been different had Malcolm Butler been on the field? I'm not entirely sure, but I do fully believe that he gives them a better chance to win than Eric Rowe.
I think we're just relishing the chance to actually criticize the Patriots here. On the other side of things, you mentioned Nick Foles and how he played. The natural conversation is where he winds up. You know, who is the best fit for Foles? The Jets, the Browns, Cardinals, someone else?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? If you look at the Cleveland Browns, they have a solid offensive line. That's clearly what he just is coming from in Philadelphia. You got to like the Cardinals and their youth, along with their new offensive coordinator, Mike McCoy, and a chance to really kind of start fresh under new head coach Steve Wilks out there. You know, I could see the Buffalo Bills making a play where they don't want to have to start completely over with a first-round rookie quarterback. They clearly have a playoff team in place. They clearly do not like Tyrod Taylor as their starting quarterback. I don't believe Nathan Peterman, he of 6 interceptions and 2+ quarters of NFL play, is going to be the guy. And so if you look at a team, you could go over to Buffalo. That's a playoff team that's in place. They have a new offensive coordinator. I could see a Nick Foles in a Buffalo Bills uniform next season.
What about the possibility he stays with the Eagles? It's not the worst job in the world, right? He's a hero. He doesn't have to take the punishment. People always love the backup quarterback. You think there's any chance he stays in Philly?
Well, he'll certainly never have to buy another beer in Philly, right? You know, if I look at this, I think it's a 50-50 proposition. And I think a lot of people, you look at his contract, he has another year left on his contract. The contract's going to void after next season. And so clearly you think, well, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, we want to get some type of return on that investment. And so the idea is, okay, let's trade him and get something right now in free agency. Here's where I pause, though, is that Carson Wentz, not only is he coming off an ACL injury, he also had an MCL injury. The good rule of thumb is 8 months for an ACL. It looks like you have to tack on a month for an MCL. And so it's not entirely certain that he's going to be ready for the 2018 season opener. You want to make sure that you are set for 2018. And while it's great to have draft picks, you want to get back into the playoffs. You're not entirely sure when Carson Wentz is going to be ready. And so you know what you have in your backup in Nick Foles. I would like to see, if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles or if I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I would like to see Nick Foles stay with this team through training camp into the season. And then come the end of October when the trade deadline hits, there's going to be a very needy team out there, and you can hold them for ransom when they know that you have a Super Bowl MVP that you're willing to part ways with when you have a healthy Carson Wentz.
The Eagles are the second favorite to win the Super Bowl next season, behind the first place Patriots, who they just beat in the Super Bowl. Now, when we're talking about this Patriots dynasty, it has to end eventually, even though it seems like Tom Brady isn't getting older. He is. That's just reality. The Eagles have a lot of guys coming back, and they have some guys who are injured, Jason Peters, Carson Wentz, who are also going to be back next year. Do you think that Philadelphia is possibly the best positioned team to be the next NFL dynasty?
You know, it's an interesting thought. It's difficult because the Patriots have been doing this for 18 years. And so I don't know if there's a team that is positioned to do this for 2 decades that's out there right now. The New England Patriots are that team. And honestly, if Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are together next season, they should be the #1 pick to go out there and win the Super Bowl. They should be the #1 pick every season that they are together. Of course, we don't know if they will be together. More Belichick than Brady. When it comes to the Eagles, though, yes, they have a good young core. They have an MVP caliber quarterback. They have a head coach who is a calculated risk taker who is going to be aggressive. They have a GM in Howie Roseman who, I mean, made great trade after great acquisition this season. And so you trust now that he has the reins back and is fully comfortable there in that chair after that little strange gap year in the Chip Kelly year. This is a very solid team. But look, we could have said the same thing last year had Atlanta beaten the Patriots, had Kyle Shanahan decided to run that ball. When you look at that young core, when you look at that coach, when you look at that MVP quarterback, the truth is the team that's always here is the New England Patriots. And as long as Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are together, and I certainly hope they are as a football fan next season, that is going to be the greatest dynasty in NFL history.
I'm not sure the city of Philadelphia could withstand an Eagles dynasty, to be honest. Jonathan, appreciate your time today.
Thanks, y'all.
It's Tuesday, which means Dan Green is here to break down the latest in college basketball. Rankings out, top 3 remain unchanged. Villanova, Virginia, Purdue, but that's no fun. Let's talk about some of their weaknesses. What do you think it makes each of these teams most vulnerable?
Villanova and Virginia are kind of an inversion of one another in that both are elite on one end of the floor and good but not necessarily great on the other. For Villanova, they have the #1 offense right now in terms of efficiency. Their defense is a little vulnerable. They don't have a lot of size, which we're used to seeing with Villanova. And right now, they don't have a ton of depth either. They usually play with a short rotation, but with Phil Booth's injury, that's another blow there. So if guys get tired or they have to go to the bench with foul trouble, that could come back to haunt them. Virginia has the best defense in the country, one of the better defenses that we've seen in years, but their offense is not really built to go on big runs or to come back if they do get down, if teams are able to hit shots over their defense. And so that's something that could hurt in the postseason if they get in one of those situations. They played a very deliberate style on offense at a slow pace. They like to grind out games. And so that's something that could be somewhat of a deficiency if they find themselves in that situation, which isn't likely given their defense. Purdue, for a team that's so balanced, they don't have a lot of glaring weaknesses or obvious issues. They're not a great rebounding team, which is something that you don't necessarily expect considering they have some pretty good size. They have 2 7-footers that they rotate in at the 5. So if teams are able to get second chances on them on defense, that's a way to score on them, even though their defense is sound overall. Kind of losing the possession battle there, and teams able to pile up points that way.
Well, let's talk about one of our favorite topics, Trae Young. The Sooners had a rough loss on Monday night by 2 points to West Virginia, and it's weird to say it, but Trae Young looked a little off. Still 32 points, but 0 assists until much late in the game. He had his first assist, so West Virginia really taking that away from his game. This is an Oklahoma team that was ranked number 4 just a few weeks ago. Now they're at 17. They just have this loss at home to West Virginia. Are you worried about Trae Young and his team?
I am a little bit. I think to a certain extent, I don't know if they were ever necessarily the number 4 team in the country. I mean, these things kind of pop up and come and go as teams win and lose and whatever. But what we're seeing right now is that it's a team that has a lot of work to do in other areas. Their defense is not necessarily the kind of defense that enables a deep run in the postseason. Even when they were winning games, they were getting in these spurts where they were trading baskets back and forth. And you could see that that's something that might come back to haunt them. And on offense, they have better complementary players than I think people realize. They have guys that can hit some shots. Christian James is a good player. Brady Manick is another freshman who's been able to capitalize somewhat on the attention being drawn by Young. But right now they need to not be so reliant on him to kind of carry and generate things. Last night he was battling an illness, so he was a little bit off. But they really need to tighten up that defense. The thing, though, that really is most encouraging about them is that they have Trae Young. We've seen in postseasons in recent years, UConn did it twice with Kemba Walker and Shabazz Napier, that when you have a game-changing guard, a guy that can take over the game, that can make up for a lot of other deficiencies. That's what carried them in the beginning of the year. It could be what carries them at the end of the year, but right now they're kind of figuring out that balance and rounding out the rest of their team.
Now, over the weekend, Duke lost to St. John's, who had lost 11 in a row. Grayson Allen, their senior leader, he's been struggling, inconsistent, just 7 against St. John's. A week earlier, 5 against Virginia. We know about Duke's freshmen, but do they go as Allen goes?
He is a very important player. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily be framing it in that way if they could get some stops on defense against St. John's. That was a big issue. Shamori Pons put up 31 or 33 on them. And so that's probably their biggest problem overall. And then, yeah, Allen has not had the kind of senior year that we were expecting of him and that it looked like he would have early on in the season. Trayvon Duval arriving and playing the point there was supposed to help Allen a lot. He could play off the ball. He could be more of a shooter and a scorer and a slasher type guy. But right now, his shot isn't there consistently. And the other problem with Duke's offense is their backcourt as a whole has not been strong. Duval's also struggling. And so what they've been able to get a lot out of Marvin Bagley and out of Wendell Carter. Gary Trent has been a nice scorer on the wing, but they need Allen and Duval to really step up and be a much stronger backcourt if this team is going to be that championship level team that they can be.
Well, we say it every year that there's so much parity in college basketball, and this year it feels especially true. Like you mentioned, Duke struggling. A lot of those traditional powers are struggling. No undefeated teams left in the country. And Dan, this week in your weekly college roundup, you wrote about some mid-major teams that people should be paying attention to. Who should we watch out for come tournament time?
The one that's most interesting to me is St. Mary's. People mostly know them as kind of Gonzaga's foil in the West Coast Conference. They're in first place now. They've already beaten Gonzaga once. But they have an offense that runs through Jock Landale, a 6'11" Australian center. And so they play this kind of throwback offense where things operate out of the post a lot. They play at a slow pace. Not only does he score and rebound tremendously, he's also a great passer out of the post. And one of the things that has given teams trouble so far and could also in the postseason is not only matching up with him, but compensating for the passing that he's able to do out of there. They have 3 shooters that shoot over 40% from 3. They're one of the best. I think they're 6th in the country in three-point shooting. So that inside-outside combination is going to be really hard for teams to combat. On the other end of the floor, their defense is not great. They're 105th right now in defensive efficiency. So they're vulnerable to teams, letting them up that way, maybe getting into, kind of a scoring battle. But that combination of Landale and the shooters is something that can, fall any great team. And so they're a team that I would not be surprised at all to see in that second weekend.
Yeah, going to be a lot of fun to watch. Not a lot of time till March. Dan, Thanks so much for joining us as always.
Thanks for having me.
From the college game to the pros, our guy Jared Zwerling of the Crossover sat down with Khris Middleton of the Milwaukee Bucks. Take a look.
Hey, it's Jared Zwerling with Sports Illustrated, joining with Bucks starting small forward Khris Middleton. Khris, thanks for joining us, my man.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So congrats, by the way, on Player of the Week. What's working out with you so well with your game right now?
Just playing in rhythm. I'm playing aggressively with Giannis and Eric Bledsoe on the wing, with Jabari being back. It just allows a lot more freedom for movement, a lot more gaps to drive, a lot more openness to catch and shoot. So just trying to play in rhythm and trying to play aggressively.
Very exciting with Jabari back. What are you seeing with his game and how are you playing off him right now?
He's a problem. He's going to create a lot of problems in the paint. He also can shoot that mid-range in the 3, but for the most part, he's going to try to get to the attack, and he's done a better job so far finding guys wide open in practice in the 2 games he's played.
And what are those one-on-one matchups like with Giannis? I know those got to be pretty fun. He's obviously doing so dynamic offensively, but
it's crazy when I get matched up with him in practice. Man, he makes me work. My step backs don't do anything for him. He's still able to cover that ground and block it. So it's just you have to find a different way, be a little bit more creative, try to sneak up a shot against him. He's a great defender. He could guard multiple guys. So for me, that's just going to make me better in the long run.
So overall, be honest, what's the 1-1 record right now between you two?
At first, I would say I had the advantage. Now it's probably gone to him.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's one of the best players in the world. So I mean, I hate to lose to him, but there's no better guy to lose to, and that's him.
What is he like off the court? Just personality? He's personality-wise, interest. I mean, you see the fans after games, all the Greek fans after the Brooklyn Nets game. All the fans are there, like 100-plus fans. What is that like to see? Just being around him.
It's great. It's great, man. He loves his fans, which is great. He loves the city. He loves his country where he's from. So every city we go to, I mean, he has a crazy amount of support from people from here and from Greece and some from Africa, and he embraces them all like they're his family. So it's special to see. When you're with them, but sometimes it doesn't click till a little bit later.
Of course, a big thing happened this year, transition from Jason Kidd to Joe. What's that transition been like behind the scenes, just with practices, film sessions? Any difference that you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was tough when everybody found out, but I mean, it's a business. We've realized that. But the transition has been smooth. Joe's done a great job of getting guys to buy into him now and his system and the way he thinks and the way he wants to run things. So he's done a great job. His film sessions are great. Guys are getting a lot out of it. They're learning from it, and they're coming out that film room with confidence, which we need right now, especially in a crucial point in this season.
With Joe Prunty as head coach from Jason Kidd, what is Joe doing? You mentioned the film sessions, just maybe his philosophy and film sessions, just overall. What are you seeing?
He preaches a lot of confidence. He likes to keeps his guys uptick and confident. So a player will make a bad or a dumb decision sometimes, but he say, hey, it happens. This is what I want you to do next time. I know if you're in this position again, you're going to do it right and we're going to win the game or whatever. So he praises confidence and keeps guys going, which is definitely what we need with this team.
Interesting. So with the team itself looking ahead, this is a very interesting race with the Eastern Conference. You guys have big expectations, obviously, with Jabari Parker coming back and Giannis ascending to superstar level. You're obviously playing so great, Khris. Where is this team thinking where they want to go in the East?
We think we get deep. We have a very talented team. Guys are banged up right now. Deli just hurt himself. Malcolm hurt himself. We still have Mirza Televic out. But I know we have a deep team. Jabari just came back. We think we can get far. We have so much talent, so much firepower on the starting court, and then on the bench, that we feel like we can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe the Finals.
Is there a team goal short term, number 3 in the East, number 2, anything that you guys look at?
Right now, before All-Star break, we're trying to get to that 4th spot. We have a great stretch of games before the break to get that goal. Then hopefully we won't let it go after that.
That's great to hear. Yeah. One final one for you. You know, with Eastern Conference, the Cavs are struggling. There is some openness. You mentioned your goal is top 4. Do the Cavs struggles give you guys a sense, you know what, we can really do it this year? Do you think it's giving other teams, too, a sense of momentum, some confidence that there's a chance?
Definitely, man. You see a team struggling at the top that's been at the top for so long, like the Cavs have with LeBron. I mean, your eyes get big. You feel like, you know, if you get a chance with them, we can knock them off. But we have to get there first. I mean, they've been there for a couple years in a row. We've been trying to get there. So I feel like we're on the right path. We're close to knocking them off or a couple other teams off. Our goal is to be a top 3 or 4 team in the East. So we're close to being in that conversation. So hopefully we can get them.
Khris, you're the man. Best of luck. Congrats on Player of the Week. We'll see you soon in the playoffs. Number 4 seed, maybe more, Eastern Conference. Thanks, Khris, again.
Thanks.
The NBA trade deadline is Thursday, so it's once again time to break out our high-tech wheel to see which teams should buy, sell, or stand pat as the deadline looms. I'll give it the first spin here.
My technical device over here.
Modern technology.
Very technical. Okay, the Washington Wizards. Well, this one is interesting to me, I think, because they've been playing so well without John Wall, but there's no way that they're going to get rid of him. I do think they are more than one player away from contending in the East. I think they could use that 3rd star, so I would like to see them be able to do that, but I don't know specifically who they could package together to make that move.
You're right. They won't move John Wall, but they should. You know, this is a team this is a team that can't get there. There's nothing they can do to get to championship level. While Wall still has value, he can be sold to another team as something, you know, to bring in and sell to the fan base, a la Blake Griffin in Detroit. So I think that the best way for Washington to eventually get there is to consider trading John Wall, even if they won't.
So do you think that won't, that's very dramatic, Robin. I'm a little shocked by this. Do you think they would actually do that?
No, I don't think they would. I would say they should be sellers. They'll probably look more to be buyers.
All right, let's see what's next on our high-tech device here.
Each spin has so much drama.
So,
ooh.
Oh, I'm excited to hear what you think about this one. Our favorite thing to talk about.
I mean, they're the team that's in every trade rumor. I saw earlier today an anonymous Cavs player said that Montel Jordan could help the team when asked about DeAndre Jordan.
Oh, that's hilarious.
We know that the Cavs are going to be buyers here at the deadline. The question is there anything out there for them to buy? You know, they have that Brooklyn pick, which they might be willing to move, but only if they get the necessary return. You've heard a lot of names, George Hill, Jordan, as I mentioned. The one that intrigued me a little bit was hearing Aaron Gordon of the Magic, because he has some three-point shooting he's worked on. He's an athlete, can guard multiple spots. You know, because it's not going to be that name likely that blows you away, but they need multiple pieces and they need to improve across the board. And there's a lot of, you know, tense moments in Cleveland, because if they don't do anything, how much do LeBron and Dan Gilbert actually butt heads there behind the scenes?
Well, and it seems like they're having like this game of chicken, right? LeBron won't commit to them, but Gilbert won't do anything. He won't move that pick unless he has a little more security that it's going to be for a good reason. So who do you think is in the right here? Who has more power? It's got to be LeBron, right?
Well, I think ultimately LeBron has more power, but Dan Gilbert might think he has more power.
That's been his problem this whole time.
Maybe a little bit of misplaced arrogance considering his stature in the business world and that he owns the team. Look, every star in their walk year does the same thing. It's not like LeBron's the first guy to do this. You know, we've talked about Dwight Howard. We've talked about Kevin Durant. You know, we're talking about Paul George even this year. LeBron just happens to be the biggest name, and therefore it resonates the most. I would love to see LeBron walk into the office and say, I'm waiving my no-trade clause. Let's get something done. But again, I don't think that'll happen.
I would love to see them give him some help.
Who do we got next? I thought we were going to get the Cavs again.
I was going to say, well, I could definitely keep going about them. Okay, I like this one. You know, we hear a lot of C.J. McCollum's name coming up, but we also hear a lot of reports that every call interested in either McCollum or Lillard gets the response of, we are not interested in breaking these two guys up. So I have to believe that for now. I do think they could use some help on offense, another piece, so that those two guys don't have to carry the load, but I don't see those two guys being separated there.
You know what? You could spin the Blazers as sellers for the same reason offseason, I made the argument with Washington.
Yeah.
But that team and fan base has some support there. I could see them being buyers, and they might be the most intriguing landing spot for DeAndre Jordan. Because if you can get a floor spacer in the sense that Jordan's a vertical floor spacer in the high screen and roll, rim dive game, that could really make them explosive offensively.
I love that. I would love to see those guys together.
Here's our final spin for this wheel of trades.
Okay, there you go, Toronto Raptors.
I mean, I think the Raptors are right there. I mean, This is a year where Cleveland is vulnerable. Boston is not some overwhelming juggernaut. I think they should be buyers for sure looking around the market. They have a very balanced team. They've done a very nice job of, bringing in some youth to go around Lowry and DeRozan so that those guys weren't the only core pieces. So they have some ability, given that they have these younger players that they could possibly flip. I don't know if there's one guy on the market that I say he has to be their target, but I definitely think they should be fielding, suggestions on who they could bring over and acquire, because they could theoretically come out of the East this year.
Yeah, they are right there. Like you said, it kind of feels like now is a great time to make that move. You mentioned that young core of guys, those two guards. They don't have a lot of assets because they gave up so much for Serge Ibaka last year. So who do you think would be the guy or two that they could move? Is it one of those younger players?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at younger players and draft picks when you're trying to improve that way, because I doubt that they wind up moving Lowry or DeRozan, who are the two name players, of course, that come up when you talk about Toronto. But we'll see what this team does, because I think that's what everybody is watching as the trade deadline approaches. The NBA, of course, in trade mode, but it is also signing time in college football.
Don't forget.
Amy took a look at the best incoming defensive players for next season.
Recruiting is all about who's next. And as we count down to National Signing Day 2018, we're giving you an inside look at the next big names headed to the college game. You may not know these defensive players yet, but these are the guys you'll see making the big plays on Saturdays this fall. So look smart to all your friends by dropping the names of the top 5 defensive players in 2018. It's good to be the Clemson Tigers because they've got their bookends on the defensive line. 2 5-stars are in this class, starting with the number 3 overall prospect in Xavier Thomas. Thomas is a big dude at 6'2", 260 pounds, and the word to describe him is elite. He's truly a special player, a force on that defensive line who really knows how to play the position. I love his motor, and boy, is he explosive. This is a prospect you build your defense around. But it doesn't stop there for the Tigers. They're losing D-line talent to the NFL, but they're reloading at a high level. KJ Henry is another 5-star defensive end, but a completely different player than Thomas. He's 6'5", 235, so a longer, rangier edge rusher. He gets off the edge quickly, can change direction really nicely, and can get around that corner and get after the QB. And like Thomas, he's a high motor guy. So QBs facing this defensive line should be real nervous. We're sticking in the South with the number 2 defensive end, but we're heading to the SEC and the national champs. Iyabi Anoma is the number 4 overall prospect in 2018, and he's heading to Tuscaloosa. I watched his film. I imagine Nick Saban had to see about 2 plays of this guy before offering him. He flies off the edge. Anoma is truly an elite athlete with great explosiveness and flexibility, and once he hones that technique a little bit, watch out. Those Alabama coaches will have him reaching his full potential. When we talk about star defensive linemen these days, Penn State may not be the school we all think of immediately, but that's changing. They've been loading up on stars the past few classes, and James Franklin and company did it again in 2018 with 5-star Micah Parsons. Parsons is the number 3 defensive end, but the number 5 overall prospect in the country. Parsons looks like a man. He's 6'3", 235, and he can move. He's quick to get off the ball, but what I love about his film is his relentless pursuit. He will continue to chase down the play no matter where it is. The top 4 defenders in the class are defensive ends, but we've got an inside linebacker at our number 5 spot. Palaye Gaoteote is a 5-star from powerhouse Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, and he's heading to USC. The Trojans land the number 1 inside linebacker in the country and a versatile athlete who can truly play all the linebacker roles. He has the athleticism to chase guys down on the outside and the toughness to play up in the box. Gaoteote is a prospect that will be the voice and heartbeat of a defense, and the Trojans will be the beneficiary. So that's your top 5 defensive players coming at you in the 2018 recruiting class. Stick with us here at SI's Recruiting Corner as we take you all the way to signing day and beyond. Well, if you've been buried in watching the NFL, the Super Bowl, college football, you may not realize that National Signing Day is tomorrow, Wednesday, and we're going to have lots of cool stuff going on here. We saw some of those guys coming to the college game. Robin, Alabama has had the #1 class, I believe, 6 consecutive years and maybe like 8 out of the last 10, and they might not get it this year.
Well, that would be a little bit of a surprise, right? Because we just talked about trades and signings. So much easier to sign. Like, I want this guy. Let's just go get him. You don't have to construct things around a salary cap, but we'll see where these top recruits wind up landing. Of course, the trade deadline looming as well. Dan Gilbert and the Cavs on the clock. We'll have much more tomorrow here on SI Now Live, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, check out @SI Now Live on Twitter for the latest videos and updates.